Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajaka Ashtoto Tata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajaka Ashtoto Tata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Kokti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. You think Tapas will come back? You don't know. He was here. Did you see him? He came and he left. Okay. Anyway, we'll see. Okay. So we are in text 20, right? I think that's okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sureshwar, see if you can close the door, the kitchen door and the other door back here. Thank you. Okay. On this 4th day of June 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, Transcendental Knowledge, text 20, page 207. Tyaktva karma palasangam Nityatripto nirashayaha karmanyabhipavrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha Tyaktva karma pala sangam nitya tripto nirashayaha karmanyabhipavrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha. Tyaktva karma pala sangam nitya tripto nirashayaha karmanyabhipavrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha. Abi. Tyaktva karma pala sangam nitya tripto nirashayaha karmanyabhipavrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha. That's it? Okay. Chad, you with us?
Tyaktva karma palasangam
Tyaktva karma pala sangam
nitya tripto narashrayaha
nitya tripto nirashayaha
karmanyabhipavrittopi
karmanyabhipavrittopi
naiva kinchip karoti saha.
naiva kinchit karoti saha.
Mahima's on also.
I was just going to call her name. Mahima, you're on.
Tyaktva karma phala sangam
Tyaktva karma pala sangam
nitya tripto nirasharayaha
nitya tripto nirashayaha
karmanya abhipravtopi
karmanyabhipavrittopi
naiva kinchit karoti saha.
naiva kinchit karoti saha. Okay, word by words. Tyaktva, having given up, karma pala sangam, attachment for fruit of results. Nitya, always, triptaha, being satisfied. Nirashrayaha, without any shelter. Karmani, inactivity. Abhipavrittaha, being fully engaged. Api, in spite of. Na, does not. Eva, certainly. Kinchit, anything. Karoti, do. Saha, he. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruit of action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. So I'm going to read the previous verse because this he refers back to the verse before. One is understood to be in full knowledge whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. Purport to text 20. This freedom from the bondage of actions is possible only in Krishna consciousness, when one is doing everything for Krishna. A Krishna conscious person acts out of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he has no attraction for the results of the action. He is not even attached to his personal maintenance, for everything is left to Krishna. Nor is he anxious to secure things, nor to protect things already in his possession. He does his duty to the best of his ability and leaves everything to Krishna. Such an unattached person is always free from the resultant reactions of good and bad. It is as though he were not doing anything. This is the sign of akarma, or actions without fruit of reactions. Any other action, therefore, devoid of Krishna consciousness, is binding upon the worker, and that is the real aspect of vikarma, as explained herein before. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this seems like a pretty inconceivable state to be in, where you're not attached at all to the fruits of your activity, but everything is done for Krishna, and you place your maintenance and your safety and everything in the hands of Krishna. It's up to him. And this is one of the aspects of surrender. There's this one verse, it's called Sharanagati, means someone who has gone to the shelter of Krishna. And there's 6 aspects. The one is anukulyasya sankalpa, Patikulyasya varjanam. Rakshishyati vishvaso goptvid vevananam tata atmanikshepa karpanye shadvidha sharanagati. Shadvidha means 6 aspects of sharanagati. So the first one is anukulyasya sankalpa. Anukulyasya means favorable. So there's a whole list of things that are favorable for devotional service. There's another book called the Upadeshamrita, the Nectar of Instruction by Rupa Goswami. It's only 11 verses long, but they're all very essential verses for the aspiring bhakta or bhaktin. And there's also a list there of positive things that will help your devotional service. It says, how does it go? Well, the first one, Vacho Vegam Anasakota Vegam, Jiva Vegam Ropasta Vegam, Metan Vegam Yovashahita, Dira Sabam Apima and Prativing Sashisha. Okay. So these are actually aspects that you should look for in someone who is a spiritual master. So this says Vacho Vegam. Vega means urges, pushings. Like we can experience how when we're hungry, the stomach is pushing, and we have to serve the stomach. But there's also other pushings. Of course, we may be fasting. And they say, no, not today, or at least no grains, beans, ekadashi. But Vacho Vegam, I remember, it goes back to a long way, when I was living in New York City, and I lived in New York City as a devotee, also as a non-devotee. New York City means Manhattan. And I've rode a lot of buses, That's one way of getting around. And there's always be some people who got on the bus together, and they would be talking on the bus, They always wanted to say something. You get on the subway, and people know there's always talking. So you notice that there's a whole lot of talking going on. There's a whole lot of things that you want to say. And of course, it's all what we call prajalpa, which means not talking about Krishna. They're talking about mundane things and everything like that. So that's one of the urges that you have to control. Vacho Vegam. Vacha means words, and Vega means urge. Manasa, Krodha Vegam. These are two other urges. The mind is telling you to do this. You have an obsession to do something, or you're in the habit of doing something at a certain time, and the mind is telling you, you got to do this now. This is when you get your coffee and your cigarettes. So that mind can be full of these things. And then Krodha, anger, can be a big urge. Remember, we studied in chapter 2 the degradation of the soul as kama esha. No, it says kama krodha gyayato vishayan pungsa sangasteshu bhajayate sangat sanjayate kama krodha vijayate krodha bhavati sammoha smriti vibrama smriti brangshad buddhinasho buddhinasha pranashyati. Pranashyati means destruction, and not just destruction, but total destruction. The pra is a intensifier. Just like in English we have, say beautiful, but if we say super beautiful, say, whoa, that's something, and there's a whole bunch of those you could put on the beginning, right? So anyway, this pra is one of those for Sanskrit. So this verse is saying, in the 2 verses actually in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 2, that if you meditate, and this is the first thing, where you become absorbed in something attractive in this material world, you see, not Krishna. Dhyayato vishayan. Vishayan, I always point this out, the word for objects of the sense gratification is vishaya, and the word for poison is visha. You can see the similarity there. So when you meditate on the objects of the senses, and this is the whole point of advertising, to present something to you that may be, or a certain percentage of the society. Sometimes it's practically everyone. Some attractive food, on a billboard or at the screen of some kind, or on a page, and they know that a certain percentage of people will be attracted by that image, and it will plant a desire in their heart. Then they may go on reading or doing whatever, and it's not, but it's planted. And when the next time comes, when they're hungry, say, yeah, I think I'll go down there to this restaurant and get it. I don't know why, I just feel like it, So that's dayato vishaya sangha. Sangha results. Sangha means attraction. Sangha tu prajaya. Sangat, sangha je kama. And when that attraction goes very strong, through association. Sangha means association and attraction also. So if you're, in the association of the attracting thing for a long time, then it becomes very powerful. It becomes kama, practically, and you can't say no to that. It's an obsession. If you can't satisfy, you become depressed. You see, that's it. So that's the next thing. Kama krodha vijayate. You become angry because someone is standing in front of your kama. But if it persists like that, then you turn the anger inside. And it's called depression. I can't. You're always down in the dumps. So that's the flip side of krodha. But krodha can be very destructive. You can do things that you ordinarily wouldn't do. Oh no, Prabhupada tells a story of tragic story in Calcutta, I think it was, where two brothers got fighting about something, maybe over a girl or money or something, very serious fight, and one brother killed the other brother. And he was arrested and tried, and he was sentenced to be hanged. So you can imagine what's going through his head. He's sitting in the jail. Oh, I killed my brother, and now so he's miserable. So the father appealed to the judge. He said, I've already lost one son. At least commute the sentence so it'll be life, in jail, so I could visit him, like this. Okay, so but the anger can make you do things that you later regret, obviously. So krodha bhavati sammoha, you become completely bewildered, you lose your mind, enough, anger and rage. Sammohat smriti vibhrama, and that causes you to forget everything. In other words, your memory is affected. And smriti bhrangshat buddhi nasho, and this affects your intelligence. So this is a progressive degradation of the soul, starting with too much meditation on the objects of the senses. So Krishna consciousness means to turn your attention away from that to Krishna. And it also involves, as we're doing now, cultivating the strengthening the intelligence, so you know why you want to do that. You see? And even in ordinary life, we find that trying to infuse some knowledge into someone so that they won't be so likely to engage in some sense gratification that's so self-destructive. I'm sure that in high school classes now, they didn't have it when I was going through high school because it wasn't so prominent. But the drugs, to teach, they probably have somewhere in their curriculum is someone comes in and teaches them why it's so damaging to take drugs and cigarettes and all these different things. You self-destruct. So by that knowledge, they say, well, why should I do that? I can see what the result is. Now that I know, I'm going to steer clear. You see? So the knowledge is so important. But it's not just steering clear, it's also redirecting your intelligence to something wholesome that will supplant that. And even in the material world, okay, the person gets attracted to music. Maybe, do they even have classical music anymore in high school? I played in an orchestra when I was in high school. I played the clarinet. So anyway, that's in chapter 2. But here we are with this Tyaktva karma pala sangam. So to be, sangha here means attachment, right? Yeah, attachment for the results of your activity. Now this is like a given on the material plane. If someone doesn't know anything about Krishna consciousness, just living an ordinary life, then you work very hard so you can get the fruits. And with those fruits of the money, you can buy groceries and pay your rent. And if you have leftover, you can get TV or whatever. In other words, that's kind of what material life is all about, is being responsible and taking care of things and getting objects, through your hard labor and honest labor, so you can sustain yourself. But that is a tragic waste of human life, if that's all you're doing. It's not that if you're married within Krishna consciousness, naturally you have to have some way of supporting the family and so forth. When the movement grew, in the 70s, and men and women were joining separately, and they were getting married. Sometimes they joined as couples, and Prabhupada insisted, well, now you have to get married, no illicit sex. And there's certain rules and regulations. So Prabhupada authorized, he approved of a business starting in LA. It's called Spiritual Sky Incense. And the Spiritual Sky Incense, because it was, the 60s had grown into the 70s, but there was still a lot of people at home, they were meditating, and so incense, they would need incense. So we had our own factory. I never went to the factory, but it was, maybe a 10-minute drive from the temple. And they were producing these wonderful incense, sticks, and also fragrant oils. And when I joined in Brooklyn, that business was also going on out of Brooklyn. They would ship, they would manufacture in California, and they would ship the incense and the oils. And one of my first engagements was filling the little oil bottles, so that devotees would then take them out on the street or go to head shops, and whatever. So that was authorized, because there wasn't room. We didn't have room for grahastas in the temple. They needed to get an apartment. So they needed a way of sustaining, and that was one way of doing it. So that's authorized, because if your whole life is dedicated to serving Krishna, like the artists, there were artists who were couples. I remember Bhardwaj, he was a wonderful artist, and he was married to Rukmini. Now she wasn't an artist, but she very intelligent, and she they didn't have any children when I was there, but she was supporting him. And he was, really, some of the paint, I don't think enough of the paintings on this room are by him. But if you go to Los Angeles, they have a Fate exhibition. What is the Fate? First American Theistic Exhibition. Call it Fate. And Prabhupada wanted that because his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was trying to preach to the masses, but how to attract them, because at that point they weren't so attracted to big Krishna conscious festivals. But he had, let me put it this way: he had dioramas made, of like this painting of Lord Chaitanya's dancing in the kirtan. It's classic, And if you go to Mayapur, you'll see a diorama, which is something like what you see these sculptures that are built into the wall, but they would be freestanding, and you would see Lord Chaitanya, and and these are statues that were made, and it's a permanent exhibit like that. Or they'll have like the pastime of Mother Yashoda binding, Damodar, that's there. So Bhardwaj became an excellent sculptor. He asked Prabhupada, what can I do? I want to help you make these dioramas. He said, okay, go to India and learn how to make them. And he spent time in India, came back, and soon there was a whole bunch of devotees who were doing that in LA. And I don't know if they opened it during Prabhupada's time, but at least in the late 70s, that Fate Museum opened, and it's been there ever since. They have the old temple. So that's a wonderful way of engaging your artistic abilities for Krishna, you see. And they would get, and because book distribution is going on, and the incense were going out, they were supported, these artists, because their service is so valuable. So, but that's a far cry from what Krishna is talking about here. There's no karma pala sangam. It's not that you're attached to the fruits of the activity. You're attached to Krishna, and you're doing something that will please him because it's pleasing the spiritual master. And it's a glorification of Krishna. Just like the devotees who work on the altar and beautifully dress the deities, I mean, it's an art that you develop, but it's, being regular, it's an austerity. But it's one you gladly undertake. There you're intimately serving the deity, and, you're feeling the deity's presence. I never was able to develop that. I did do some artiques and things on the altar at one point. But we shouldn't think that coming together and glorifying the deity in the temple and chanting Hare Krishna is also not deity service. That's our deity service. Krishna, you know, that's why there's some pleasure there in the chanting, because Krishna is pleased. It's, oh, they're chanting my name, and the name is so powerful. When we read some of the glorification of the name, it says, I think I gave you this one. Yeah, this song, Ang Hak Sang Hatatakilang Sakadadiya. Do you remember that one? I don't think anyone picked it up by just hearing it, right? Can you chant with me? Ang Hak Sang Hatatakilang Sakadadiya. So it's about how just chanting one name purely, you know, without any, with full attention and just calling out to Krishna, eradicates lifetimes of karma. You don't realize it, you know. Just like you don't realize when you're just leading an ordinary life how much karma you're accruing and what the result will be. So the holy name is so merciful, and in the end, the elimination of karma is just one of the preliminary benefits. The ultimate benefit is the clearing of the heart and revealing, and that's what's always been there. This is what's so great. This is not something we have to bring from out. What's always been there is this love for God, and it's been expressed in so many attractions for things of this world, which are perversion of pure love of God. So the pure devotee sees Krishna everywhere. Of course, he sees him in the temple, on the altar, and everything, in everyone's heart. But even in going out and seeing the trees and everything, because when you're informed and you're absorbed in this and saturated in this knowledge, where is there not Krishna? It's Krishna's energy. He's there in the super soul, and all these poor trees that are standing out here. Well, these are fortunate trees, the ones out here, because they'll sometimes hear the holy name. We go out on Harinam, we stand out here for a while, we go down to the beach, right? So there's an effect, you know? And the process of devotional service and the absorption in it can produce the spiritual pleasure, the bliss, that has nothing to do with your age, nothing to do with your where you were born or anything like that, or gender or anything. It's simply coming from the soul, from the super soul. So that's the advantage of living as austerely as possible, giving as much to Krishna of the fruits of our activity, and nitya tripto, to be always satisfied. There's a lady in North Carolina, where the archives is there, the Bhaktivedanta archives, where they have all of the old original slides of Prabhupada's pictures and deity pictures, thousands and thousands, and the paintings. And this lady's been working in the archives. She's married to one fellow there who's also been working there for like 40 years, you know. And nitya tripta means one who is always satisfied. That's what nitya tripta means. How can you always be satisfied? Well, certainly not if you're always absorbed in trying to get some vishya, you know, which is changing, and which ultimately you become satiated. Okay, enough. I like ice cream, but this is my third ice cream cone. I can't have it, right? You can experience that in the Sunday feast sometimes. Yeah, I already had your halva. It's very excellent, but please. So the senses have their limits, right? But nitya tripta means you're not dependent on something from the outside to be satisfied. That's why you read the lives. You know, the lives of the great devotees are so instructive. Srila Prabhupada, of course, we have that Lilamrita. You've been reading some of it, right? That's why you found a mistake. Isn't it amazing? You know, the life is growing up as a devotee and everything. It's wonderful. But the lives of the Goswamis are very instructive. The 6 Goswamis. These were the first disciples of Lord Chaitanya, especially Rupa Sanat and Raghunath, like that. So there's a song, beautiful song that was composed by Srinivasacharya, and Prabhupada would sing the song. And I know it if I hear it, I can sing along with it. But there's one or two that I still have memorized, and my favorite one is describing the renunciation of two of the actually 3 of them were extremely wealthy. If they hadn't become, surrendered to Lord Chaitanya and become very austere, renounced Goswamis, they would have been what would be today called millionaires, multimillionaires, or billionaires. Raghunath Das Goswami was the son of a great zamindar, means a landowner, and he was the only son. And he was already married. You know, he was a young man, and they got him married. They got married young in India to a wonderful, chaste and beautiful girl. And so, but he had to become attracted to Lord Chaitanya, and he went with this Panihari festival, which I think is coming up here, but they just had it last Saturday in Laguna. Yeah, but it's actually scheduled for this weekend, on the calendar. Yeah, but anyway, Panihati Chittadahi festival. It's the festival. Lord Nityananda was there, and Raghunath Das Goswami, who was, even though he was a young man, he had access to wealth, So Nityananda said, well, what I want you to do is to put on this festival, invite all the Brahmins, and you make a combination of cooked rice and yogurt and sugar, and that's a special, that's called dahi, chittadahi. So Raghunath was, okay, you do it. So he came, and they made all these pots, and there was, all the Brahmins came, and so many of them, there wasn't a room on the bank of the Yamuna. Some of them were sitting in the water, shallow water, and taking it. At a big festival. And Lord Nityananda, he brought Lord Chaitanya there by mystic power, but only a few could see it, So it was very strange, because Lord Chaitanya was going around to each pot, and he was giving, Lord Nityananda was going around each pot and giving Lord Chaitanya some of it, and he was feeding him. But they didn't figure, because most of them couldn't see Lord Chaitanya. What is he doing with all this rice and dye? Anyway, so it was a great festival. And after that, Raghunath Das, they had to have him practically locked up. They had to have him guards, because he was going to run away and go with to Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri. And one night he lied to his titular spiritual master, and told him, "Oh, I just have to pass water, in the river." But he ran away. He got away, and he walked for days in the jungle, off the beaten road, because his parents had hired guards, and they had horses and everything, and they went after him, but they couldn't find him. And he joined Lord Chaitanya. He never actually spoke to Lord Chaitanya directly. He was so in awe, So he was put in the charge of Swarup Damodar, Lord Chaitanya's intimate servant and secretary, and he actually trained him up. But he became the emblem, from basically a multimillionaire would have been. He gave all that up. And he was so austere that even for eating, as a sannyasi or an aspiring sannyasi, you can beg food, So he started begging on the stairs of the Jagannath temple. They're famous in Jagannath Puri for cooking 58 offerings. And if you go there, no matter who you are, you can eat at any time. They always have some prasadam for you. It's known for that. So he would stand on the steps, and the Brahmins would come with their little packages of prasad, and they would give him a little something. So he was doing that for a while. And his father was sending him like a monthly stipend, They were saying, well, to support him. And he was accepting it, wasn't banking it. He was putting on a big feast for all the sannyasis, and Lord Chaitanya would come, in Puri. So then that stopped, and Lord Chaitanya asked Swarup Damodar, well, how... I don't see Raghunath anymore. How's he getting his food now? Oh, he's standing on the stairs of the Puri temple, and when the Brahmins come out, he gets a little bit. I said, oh, that's very good, But then after a while, he didn't see him standing there. And so he asked, well, I don't see Raghunath. What's he doing now? How's he eating? Well, he thought that, he had the bad feeling. He said, well, I'm just like a prostitute here. This one gave me some, so I'm going to go to see him. This one didn't give me, I'm forget about him. He didn't like that. So instead... They cook so much food that they can't distribute it all. So some goes bad, like the rice goes bad. Even the cows won't eat it. So they throw it, into the field somewhere. So that's what Raghunath Dat was collecting, washing it off, and cleaning and making it edible. And that's what he was eating. So Lord said, so to encourage Raghunath, he went to where he was staying in some simple little hut somewhere. And he said, Raghunath, I hear you're eating this delicious Mahaprasadam. You're not giving any to me? And Raghunath said, no, it's not fit for you, Maharaj. And he found it. He started eating it. He said, why not? It's Jagannath Prasad, But he was the emblem of austerity. So how could you do that? So here's the verse describing the six Goswamis, especially those three. and how they became so austere, and how they were able to do it. Tyaktva turnamashesha mandalapatishening sadat tuchavat. Bhutva dina kaneshiko kadunaya kopina kantashrito. Gopi bhavada sarmatabda lahari kalola magno muhur. Vande rupa sanatano lagayago shri jiva gopalako. So the last line is repeated every verse, and it means he's honoring the six Goswamis. I offer my humble obeisance to the six Goswamis, namely Rupa Sanatan, Vande Rupa Sanatan, Raghu, the two Raghus, Raghunath Das Goswami and Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, he's another one, and Jiva Goswami and Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who, and he's especially referring to the three, Rupa, Sanatan, and Raghunath. Rupa and Sanatan were the finance minister and the prime minister in the government of Bengal at that time. So they were very highly respected, responsible, and they had plenty of wealth. So he says, they tyaktva, they gave it up, turnam, without a hesitation. Turnam means completely and suddenly, without regret. Ashesha, endless, mandalapati, means a circle of aristocratic, aristocracy. Mandalapati shrenis sadat tuchavat. As it was completely insignificant. They didn't hesitate and say, well, maybe I should take a little with me. No. They gave it all up and they went to Lord Chaitanya, or they went to Vrindavan in this case. And what did they do? Tuchavat, Bhutva, Dina Kaneshika. Dina are the conditioned souls. The pure, Dina is very lowly, souls without Krishna consciousness. For their sake, Dina Gana means all of them. Ganeshiko Karunaya, out of their mercy, Kopina Kantashito, means that they took off all of the fancy clothes and the things they simply wore a loincloth, a simple Vaishya dress, and they wandered around Vrindavan. Ganeshiko Karunaya Kopina Kantashito. But what were they doing? How could they do that? If you're very wealthy, it's one thing if you're raised in a poor family and you don't have much money, you're used to it, But if you're very wealthy and suddenly you lose it all, it's very traumatic. Prabhupada says, remember someone he knew in Calcutta, and he was a follower. Many, businessmen and lawyers and everything, they were followers of Mahatma Gandhi for liberation of India, independence in the 40s. They got independence in 47. So this man was a very successful lawyer who was making so many thousands of rupees every month. But to join Mahatma Gandhi himself put on the simple clothes. He's famous for that. He also showed the austere lifestyle. So this man said, well, okay, I'm going to do that too. If you really want to be a serious follower, you had to do that. So he did it, but to come from great wealth down to poverty without Krishna consciousness, it was impossible. He committed suicide. He couldn't live that way, So these six Goswamis, they weren't miserable. The third line tells the key. It says, Gopi bhavada sarmatabda dahali kalola magno mohor. Again and again, they were diving into the ocean of nectar of the gopis' love for Krishna, which is the highest, most intense relationship with Krishna. The gopis' love for Krishna, and all the varieties of pastimes you see in the Bhagavatam, the rasa dance, and the Goswamis wrote extensive literatures describing the details. So if your mind is absorbed in that, you're chanting Hare Krishna, you're with other devotees and discussing these things and glorifying, you're completely satisfied. You can get on with minimal material things. You don't need, So that's the idea. Nityatripto nirashriya karma abhibhitopi naiva kinchit karoti. This is describing the previous verse. One who has been full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. Every endeavor. What do? You're working hard. You're doing so many things, but not for your own sense gratification, for Krishna's sense gratification. Like these boys who go out and distribute books. I never got over the hump. I would go out on Saturdays, but I was too conditioned. I'd end up, going on the subways, I do a few books, then I go to the library and spend hours there reading Prabhupada's books. instead of trying to distribute them. But if you're determined and you know, you can get over the period of hesitation and difficulty, and it's a great relishment. We have some devotees like Brigupati. He's my contemporary. We joined together 50 years ago. He's been distributing practically constantly for these 50 years. One of the leading distributors in the world, even though he's like me. But he was doing yoga. He came here and he was chanting around. Then I saw him. He's stretching. He had his foot out straight and he put his head down. He got up again. He's chanting Hare Krishna, keeping his body limber. But he's satisfied. Giving out the books and seeing people come to the temple. Vijay was here. Very ecstatic devotees. So that's what's going on here. Nitya Tripta, you can be fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Nirashriya, not taking shelter of matter. Karmani abhavitopi, although doing so many activities, they're not doing anything. Naiva kinchit karoti sa. So this is a karma. Though acting, you're really not, you don't feel like you're not doing anything in the sense of incurring any karma, good or bad. And this is what we want. We don't want so-called good karma that'll take us to heaven. We're not going to heaven. That's silly, because it's not permanent. You have to come back down again. But we want activity. There's full activity in the spiritual world. What's going on in the spiritual world? There's always something going on. Even at night, Krishna's going out to meet the gopis and everything. But Krishna goes out with the cows. Mother Yashoda is churning the butter and singing about Krishna, waiting till he comes back. There's all kinds of activity. But everything is being done with Krishna in mind. Mother's there churning, she's churning the butter and milk and everything, but she's saying, oh, Krishna will taste it. You see? So that's what Krishna consciousness means. You have this, you're working, but it's not incurring any karma. So it's called akarma or naishkarma. And that's what we want to strive for. Okay, text 21. Oh boy, this thing is coming out. These electronics sometimes give you problems. Okay. Nirashi yata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kovanapnoti kilbisham. Okay, now just a note on this, because since the majority of our students tonight are ladies. So as you probably noticed that oftentimes Prabhupada is such a man, as we have here. So this is human beings, Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he's not affected by sinful reactions. 815 darshan, yeah. Purport: a Krishna-conscious person does not expect good or bad results in his activities. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that because he is part and parcel of the Supreme, the part played by him, as a part and parcel of the whole, is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but by the endeavor of the whole body. A Krishna-conscious person is always dovetailed with the Supreme desire, for he has no desire for personal sense gratification. He moves exactly like a part of a machine. As the machine part requires oiling and cleaning for maintenance, so a Krishna-conscious man maintains himself by his work just to remain fit for action in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He is therefore immune to all the reactions of his endeavors. Like an animal, he has no proprietorship even over his own body. A cruel proprietor of an animal sometimes kills the animal in his possession, yet the animal does not protest, nor does it have any real independence. A Krishna-conscious person, fully engaged in self-realization, has very little time to falsely possess any material object. For maintaining body and soul, he does not require unfair means of accumulating money. He does not, therefore, become contaminated by such material sins. He is free from all reactions to his actions. So in these purports, Prabhupada is always bringing us up to the ideal, that's being expressed in brief by Krishna in his verses. And that, that state of mind, I mean, how it's almost inconceivable. But this is the great value of having Prabhupada's life as an example, and we have such detailed description of his life. How to live in such a way that you're always focused on the pleasure of Krishna, and you're taking pleasure in the pleasure of the Lord. This is the whole key to Krishna consciousness. That if you're consciously doing that, foregoing your own. And that's why getting up early is so important. Because, everyone wants to sleep in, sleep as much as possible, right? Get up at the last minute, just enough to, take a shower, hopefully, get in the car, go to work, or take a little breakfast, But no, this is clearly, if you get up early, come to Mangalartik, this is not for your own pleasure. It's for Krishna's pleasure. And you can feel the purification of that. I've had such a wonderful opportunity over these years. Very fortunate to always live in a temple or near a temple, near enough where I could practically walk or we used to have to take a 5-minute drive to come here. We lived that. But that so the every aspect of the morning program has its own unique flavor and purification. Did I tell you my new word that I made up? Mantu Jagvi Gukla? I told you. But you don't know about that, Kathy. Okay, so this is an important thing now. So, Mantu Jagvi Gukla, this is the morning program. Man is Mangalartik. Tu is Tulsi Puja, that's what's next. Ja is Japa period. Gri is greeting the deities. Gu is Guru Puja. And Kla is class. So Prabhupada, he created this morning program very scientifically. There's of course the japa, there's deity worship, all these things, even taking Charanamrita is part of it, and especially class is very important. So it's just like someone who, because I do that also. He also take a walk, which Prabhupada did also. You neglect his body. The body is your tool by which you'll see him in Krishna. So we want to take care of it, feed it nicely, rest enough, But always with the idea, well, this is for the purpose of keeping good health so that I can keep serving Krishna, right? So that I can do my service, So that I've been so blessed that through my whole career, practically, I've been able to come to Mangalarti, And it's not like, oh, are you kidding? I got to get up again and go to... No, it's not like that. It's like, oh, it's time to get up, take a shower, get ready for Mangalarti. Because it becomes a real joy, so many aspects of it. And it's always varied. You can know, the chanting of the holy name, as we know, there are various stages. If you start chanting, oftentimes you become distracted a little bit, or whatever, and there's always the question of how you're going to sit, and but once you get absorbed in the chanting of the holy name, there's so much spiritual happiness there. It's just the very word Krishna. There's a verse describing the inner meaning of the word Krishna. Each syllable is it. Krishna bhu vachaka shabdo nascha nirbati vachaka tayor aikyam param brahma Krishna itchabidiyate. So he says that the syllable krish, you see, is the traction, krish, because karshati means to pull, right? It's like a plow, So karshati is where the word Krishna comes from. So the syllable krish is essential. That's all of Krishna's beauty and attractiveness. Not just his beauty, but the sound, everything, the fragrance of his lotus feet, everything is attractive to Krishna. There's Nectar of Devotion. It's such an important book. It gives 64 qualities of Krishna. Now, all of them are attractive, I am neta suram yanga sarvasal lakshananvita ruchitas tejasa yukto bhalayan vayasanvadaha. That's the first verse. Oh, this hero, Krishna, I am neta suram yanga. His limbs, all of them are perfectly proportionate and ideal, from the feet to the tips of his hair. Suram yanga. Sarvasal lakshanan. He has various auspicious aspects to his body, to his, his arms, for instance, they reach down to the knees. It's rare to have somebody who can reach down to the knees. Lord Chaitanya have the same thing. And there are 32 things, the shape of the face, everything is mentioned. So it goes on like that in detail. And the speaking, he speaks all different kinds of languages. He can convince anyone of anything, like he convinced his father to give up the Indrajagya. It's like, if you, I grew up, I remember at a certain time of the year, my father's making out the tax forms, at the kitchen table. We had a small apartment. So I went, I'd go there and I would say, oh, Dad, what you up to? I said, oh, I'm doing the taxes, So yeah, I can't read any the stories to you tonight, because I'm busy with the taxes. Tomorrow's April 15th, So it's like that. Krishna, they're trying to pay the taxes to Indra, so put the rain, right? So it's a big Indra Jagya. They do it every year, So at first he didn't want to explain it to Krishna. What can a little boy understand this? So Krishna started speaking very, Father, you shouldn't keep a secret from your own son about this, Anyway, he had other ways, and he was speaking in such a way. That's an attractive feature of Krishna. Vavaduka. He can speak in a way to convince anyone like that. So they convinced his father to explain it to him, and then he said, "Father, don't do it. Not this year." But what is Indra? It's like karma mimamsa, Father. Is that actually? Isn't it work is worship? Isn't there something like that? That came out, I think, during the days of Mahatma Gandhi. By doing your work nicely, you're actually worshiping the Lord, And we have all these Harijans, these what is it called? What is it? Something Narayan. I forget the phrase. Poor Narayan. Narayan can't be poor, But they say, okay, you just serve the poor. You're actually serving Narayan, What is it? Daridra Narayan. Yeah. So anyway, the activity, of just doing for Krishna, it should be filled with as much remembrance of Krishna as possible, because that remembrance itself makes what you're doing pure nectar. Oh, I'm actually serving this beautiful blue boy who's so clever and all attractive, and you remember the Damodar Leela. Oh, I understand. There's a Hare Krishna. Now I can, So it's not. You don't feel like, I'm so old now. I can't do anything anymore. No, it's like I can always chant Hare Krishna. Even if I can't dance like I used to, that's okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So that's a wonderful thing, and that makes it possible to give up the fruits of the activity, to live very simply, and not get entangled, and also be an example for others, and be able to help others be Krishna consciousness. All right, it's getting late, so I left a little time, very little time for a poem, but okay. So here's one that you haven't heard in a while. Baha piram natavadavapu karnayo karnikaram Bibran vasak kanaka kapisham Vaijayantin shamalam Randran veno adadasudeya puriyan gopa vrindaranyam swapatanamanam prabhishad gita kirti. This is in chapter 21 of the 10th canto. The whole chapter is called the Venu Gita chapter. And the gopis are singing. This is a preliminary verse that they chant describing Krishna coming and entering the forest. With lovely peacock plume upon his head and fragrant flower placed upon each ear, he enters Braja's woods with graceful tread, a handsome dancing actor without peer. His golden yellow raiment brightly glows, his splendid garland reaches to his knees, and from his luscious lips the nectar flows, and fills his flute with charming melodies. As Krishna thus begins his blissful day with cowherd friends who sing his glories sweet, he beautifies Vrindavan's forest way with fine impressions of his lotus feet. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for coming. Okay, we'll reconvene on Monday. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.